Hello and welcome to Snow Country for Old Men, a podcast about life in Japan's legendary Yukiguni. My name is Peter, host of the podcast. I am a freelance writer and guide based in Nagano, Japan. And before jumping into today's episode, given that this is the first episode of the podcast, it's probably worth providing just a little bit of information as to what this podcast is all about and what to expect. So firstly, the expression snow country, or in Japanese, Yukiguni, refers to the regions of Japan known for their very heavy snowfall of winter. This typically refers to the prefectures of the central and north coast along the Sea of Japan, and inland around the North Alps and some other areas. I first experienced these areas of Japan more than 10 years ago and instantly fell in love with the lifestyle up here. What I've realized over the time of living in these areas of Japan is that most international visitors know the snow country as a skiing and snowboarding destination. And that's certainly a big positive of the lifestyle up here. I mean, I certainly enjoy that. And we'll definitely be talking skiing and snowboarding on this podcast. We'll be starting off in that space today. But living here for so many years, what I realized is that this is an all year round destination with just as much to offer in spring, summer and autumn, and that the stories of the snow country are often quite different from what you might expect of your experiences in big cities like Tokyo, Kyoto and Osaka. So this podcast is really a way to promote the snow country to an international audience. For anyone who's maybe interested in traveling here, living here, or maybe you're already living here and you want to hear the stories of what's going on in the areas around you. If that's you, then I hope you really get something from this podcast. You may also be wondering, is this a podcast just for old men? Well, first and foremost, the old man I'm talking about in that title is myself. I'm a recognized old man. Lots of people in my life have been commenting on it for a long time, so I thought may as well own it. But really, it's a podcast for anyone old enough to think that traveling or living in the snow country is a good idea. And I think a lot of the stories that you're going to hear are going to appeal to the old soul in all of us. But in terms of the voices you're going to hear on this podcast, it's going to be diverse. You'll hear from young and old, women and men, Japanese and foreigners, all carving out their lives in the snow country. On today's episode, I speak with Mark of Madarao Mountain Lodge. Mark was good enough to sit down with me a couple of weeks ago on what was one of the final days of the ski season for him before he was due to shut down his ski lodge after what's been a busy winter. The first ski season in Japan with international visitors since the 2019-2020 season. We start the conversation talking about the season that was and what it was like to have international visitors back before discussing Madarao Mountain Resort itself and why Mark rates it so highly. Along the way, he drops the orographic effect into conversation. Listen out for that. I had to look up what it meant after getting home later that day. And then we move on to a little bit of Mark's story and how a Sydney native came to be living in both Japan and then Madarao. Visitors to our website, www.snowcountryforoldmen.com, will notice that the top image on the homepage is actually taken at Madarao Mountain Resort. So it seemed like a natural place to start the podcast by speaking with Mark. I hope you enjoy. So I'm sitting here today. It's the second week of March 2023, and we're moving into the later part of the season here in Nagano. I'm sitting in the very fine establishment that is Madarao Mountain Lodge. My name is Peter. The podcast is Snow Country for Old Men. And my guest today is the owner, proprietor of Madarao Mountain Lodge, Mark Stanke. Mark, you're exactly the type of old man I'm looking for. How are you?
I'm excellent. I'm an old man and I'm in snow country. And I'm a little bit grumpy too. It's the end of the season.
Well, I would have thought actually you'd probably be pretty happy to be at the end of the season. I'm sure it's been another busy season for you. How's it been?
Yeah, busier than was expected, I guess, because there was a late announcement that the borders will open in like October. Oh, Mr. Kishida gave us heaps of time in preparation, didn't he? Champion that he is. But eventually they did open up, and a lot more people than we thought came in from Australia, even though they were charging a body part to basically get on an airplane from Australia.
Yeah, I was kind of curious to see actually that the numbers for this winter were better than expected across a lot of the resorts. Like the prices to travel and the late notice with the border opening didn't seem to turn people off. Did you find that with a lot of your guests that they?
Oh no, it did turn lots of people off.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I had a really good friend who was coming across with his wife. 2 people, it was like 10,000 Australian return through that Christmas New Year period, the absolute peak. But even in January, people. Average was like 3,000 returned. Was a cheap one. So a lot of people cancelled.
Yep, no worries. So, how was that adjustment going back to having inbound come back after was it the 2 seasons without it?
Oh, it was a shock because we've had 2 years of basically snowboarding and not doing a lot midweek anyway. Weekends have been busy, but being 7 days again, that's for 10 weeks. It's like 70, 80 days straight of busyness was, definitely different to the last 2 years, that's for sure.
Yeah, no worries. So, as I mentioned, we're sitting in your lodge now. Your lodge is Madarao Mountain Lodge here in the resort, Madarao Mountain Resort. Just help us place that on the map for listeners in case they've never been here before, they're not too familiar exactly. Where is Madarao in relation to Tokyo, Nagano, and the other resorts up here?
I guess it's... is it northwest of Tokyo? But it's basically, I mean, we sort of put it in between Nozawa and Miyako because they're basically the better known resorts. It's kind of like a triangle between Miyako, us, and Nozawa. We're sort of halfway in between. So, but about an hour out from Nagano City, and Nagano's probably 2 hours on the train from Tokyo on the bullet.
So if for anyone wanting to come up here, is that the easiest way to come up by train to Nagano and then on to Madarao, or is there more direct ways to get up here?
Straight to Iyama is the nearest Shinkansen station from Ueno usually.
Yep.
But there's taxi services and the Nagano Snow Shuttle, which has been useful for a lot of people. So there's a few different ways, but mainly I think the Shinkansen's the best way to get here.
Yeah.
More fun too.
Yeah, it's all part of the experience. I think, especially for anyone who's not been to Japan before, obviously you want to spend at least one time on the Shinkansen or the bullet train. Easiest way to get yourself up here. It's that real Japanese experience. Just introduce us a little bit to your lodge. So as I said, the name of your lodge is Madarao Mountain Lodge. You're within throwing distance of the ski runs of Madarao. How long have you been operating, and what's the story behind your business here?
We've been open as a lodge since 2017. But I've been in the area since 2010 because we still have a farmhouse, which I renovated. That's the bottom, 15 minutes from Madarao at the bottom of the mountain. So we basically started doing that as our family house. And eventually I did ski patrol here and got to know Madarao and the people here well. And basically got into the ski industry by some freak of nature. I don't know how I ended up here, but I sometimes wake up just think, how the hell did I get here? But there's no regrets. It's a nice lifestyle out here. But
when you say you wake up wondering how the hell you got here, I think in a good way, or
no, probably in Corona times when I was just like the sound of birds and crickets outside, not much happening. It was probably times I was like, well, what the hell have I done?
See, that personally appeals to me. I think one of the reasons I wanted to move up to this area is exactly that, to get away a little bit from what you would consider.
Yeah, you're definitely away from the rat race here, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Corona, magnified that tenfold or something, didn't it? It was super quiet out here.
And before we jump on to Madarao itself and talk a bit more about the resort, just give us a bit more information about the lodge. Like, how would you describe it? Who do you cater to? When are you open? These types of things.
We're probably, I'd say, a family lodge. We try to keep young people who want to drink and behave badly out of our lodge. No, we take anyone with money, basically. No, but we've definitely become, I guess, a more family-friendly sort of lodge. That's probably, I wouldn't say budget, but it's definitely not a high-end lodge. It's not an expensive place to stay relatively.
Yeah, but I've had the I can honestly say the pleasure of staying here on a couple of occasions, drinking and eating here. And one thing I like about the lodge is exactly that atmosphere. It's a bit of a mix of people, both Japanese guests and foreign guests.
Yeah.
Lots of families, but also some younger people as well.
No, there's a whole spectrum of people come through here for sure.
Yeah. And when are you open for business? In terms of, are you open all year round, or are you only catering towards the ski season?
Well, we try green season, but it's usually a short and futile effort. Usually Aubonne will open for a week, Aubonne holidays. And it's beautiful out here. Like, I would thoroughly recommend coming out here in summer. It's amazing. But yeah, we're trying to promote mountain bike trails and the Lake and Jetty, supping and a whole bunch of stuff. But it's very much a work in progress. It's basically a hobby outside of winter.
It's something which I've noticed actually a lot of the Japanese resorts turning their attention more to is their green season. Obviously, they're most famous for their powder of winter, and we'll jump onto that in a moment. But they are turning their attention more to green season now. Is that something you're seeing in Madarao, that it is starting to become more of an all-year-round destination than just the winter?
No, it's not really. It's not becoming an all-year-round destination. We're trying to make it an all-year-round destination, but it's failing miserably, to be honest. But we're still trying. Like, if we've got one good season, green season, another month or 6 weeks where we'd be relatively busy, it would be nice. And there's definitely a few weekends that are busy. We have events like the running festival, what's it called, the Shinetsu Trail, mountain running thing, jazz festival. There's a bunch of smaller events. We had a few bike festivals, Grind Euro, Mad Euro, and definitely trying to promote more events to try to get people, because, outside of events is, and I think in summer too. In winter we have advantage, I think, because it's just a great mountain, and relatively there's a lot of crap mountains in Japan, and people who know snowboarding and skiing come here immediately and just go, wow, this place rocks. But in summer it's just another mountain, and there's thousands of mountains throughout Japan with campgrounds and people to go to, and a lot of them close to Tokyo. Are more convenient to get to for people in the city. So this is a bit of a long haul for people from Tokyo to come out to Madarao.
Yeah. So it really is, for the time being, all about the winter.
It's just winter, really. And August is a bit of business, and they have a few activities here, zip line and things that, but most people just come out, they just want to barbecue, really. So they bring their own food and they bring their own booze and just stay at night and barbecue, and that's great, which is exactly what I would do if I came out here, but it doesn't really transfer into anything that we can make commercially very successful, that's for sure at the moment. But we have high hopes that we can make the mountain biking here better and try to get some of those guys out here.
Yeah, well, it sounds like that's on the cards, but for the time being, the focus really is the winter. And in kind of talking about Madarao, let's jump on to Madarao's winter now. It's funny, before I ever came to Madarao, if you were just to base your decision of whether to come here or not, if you were just to read the stats of this resort, maybe it wouldn't stand out amongst all the resorts here in Japan, especially some of the nearby resorts in Nagano. So, for example, and I realize there's a lot of variation in what the official stats are, Madarao is a relatively small resort. It backs on to another resort called Tangaram Ski Circus, and it's connected by the upper runs. And in total, I think you have about 125 hectares of terrain. Does that, I think, on piste? Does that sound correct?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
The elevation is low. It's only located from 910 to 1350 meters. So you're only getting about 440 meters of vertical. That sounds pretty small. The numbers of ski runs or courses, a lot of variation in what you might read here. You could read anything up to 40 or much lower, and what they deem as courses. So I think they've been a little bit creative in actually, the same ski run might split into two at a certain point, and suddenly you have 2 or 3 different courses. Yeah. But, it's a relatively small resort. It's pretty short runs. So so based on the stats, maybe you think, maybe this is not the resort for me. But anyone with any experience knows the stats only tell a small part of the story. I assume that you rate Madarao very highly, given that you chose to set up a business here. Why so? What is it about this resort you think stands out?
I think it's I mean, the simple answer is it's easy to access side and back country for guys who are advanced. Yeah, I think, and from my experience, it's mainly the advanced skier. It's usually the dad or the mum who pays for the, people don't come from Australia usually, unless someone in the family is a mad powder hound, and because you're going to spend a lot of money to come a long way. So I think people who know skiing pretty much know what's good almost instinctively. And Madarao is a place I think you come to and just go, wow, this is really good, simply because the side country and the back, but also the in-resort trees. I don't know. I've been to a lot of other places around Japan, and I think they definitely do trim, whether there's actually a difference in the actual trees here, or I know they definitely trim with, chainsaws and stuff and open up the runs here more. For example, Apikogen is another place I went to, and Zao is another one. I worked in Zao years ago, and there's not much tree skiing because it's all really that tight. I don't know what is it, birch, that kind of scraggly, tight pack sort of forest that you can't really ski. So, I mean, yeah, so here it's about not so much the courses, but the stuff outside the courses, the tree runs in and outside the resort. And I think this is where I did my research, the orographic effect comes in. Because I said we had a guest come out. He was a PhD. He's a pretty smart guy. And I was like, and he was talking about, Madarao is great because of the orographic effect, which is basically, from what I understand, is just the fact that it's just a straight shot to the ocean. And it's basically the first mountain between here and the Japan Sea, and it just all drops on the leeward side, the other side, which is what Madarao is. So we definitely get a bunch of powder as well, which is probably more consistent, which is equal to Miyoko and Nozawa. I don't think we're any better really on average than those guys, but this whole area gets way more than other areas of Japan, I think, and even Nagano.
Yeah, and I think you hit on a really important point there, because even though we are in Nagano, and Nagano is landlocked, Madarao basically is one side of the mountain. The other side of the mountain is
on a clear day you see the Japan Sea from Tangaram.
Japan's winter weather blows in across the Sea of Japan, where it picks up all that moisture and then it dumps. This is one of the first areas. So even though it is Nagano, you are very close to the sea. The other thing which I note about Madarao is the setup of the resort's a bit different. It's the topography of the resort.
It's very open. It's not really tight, and it's got a very kind of open and loose kind of, I don't know if that's the right word, loose, but compared to Nozawa, I think, and even Akakura, which is tight streets and sort of pensions, sort of.
There's no old village here like there is in Nozawa.
It was originally a cow pasture. There's
really?
been cattle up here.
No longer?
No. Not anymore.
No cows floating around the village?
No, none that I know of.
But one thing I noticed with the resort, it's a bit unusual with the topography in that it's a bowl, that you actually ski down into the resort before going back up again. Right?
Yeah.
And I assume that topography actually works in the favour of keeping the snow in pretty good condition. It would protect it from the wind, I imagine, actually.
Yeah, I think the Tangaram's on one side and Madarao's the other, so you can usually, once you know it too, you sort of where the sun is or where the wind's coming from, you can usually, if the Tangaram side's getting a lot of sun, you can come over this side or vice versa. So you can, because it kind of wraps around Mount Madarao, so you can usually, once you know it a little, can find a patch of powder or whatever.
Yep.
And some good ski conditions depending on what time of day and that sort of thing.
And when's the best time? Like, when does the season run to and from, and when would you recommend coming up here?
Probably like December lately hasn't been that great. It's been later sort of snowfall, and there's no artificial snow here. So you just got to wait for the dumps. So I know it's a lot of people's holidays, but I generally wouldn't recommend Christmas because sometimes it can be late and
you're talking yourself out of some business.
I know. I just shot myself in the foot there, didn't I?
What is going on?
Don't come to Madarao. It's crap.
I can cut that. I can cut that if you want.
No, but yeah, I don't know. It's kind of hard as a lodge owner, even though I have no control over the snow, obviously. But it's looking at people's sad faces when it's shitty snow outside. I think I'd rather be empty sometimes.
When does the resort actually advertise its official season dates? Do you know what from when?
It doesn't ever have an official opening because they don't know. But as a rough rule, it's the first weekend after December 15.
So the reason I ask is I know I've noticed some resorts actually each season seem to have a longer and longer official seasons, even though the snowfall, you would say, if anything, is less and less reliable. And I think they're shooting themselves in the foot because Japan's brand, and certainly Madarao's brand, is its powder. And so the last thing you want your guests to do is arrive here and not have that powder on tap for them. And so I think what you're saying there is really good advice to actually just to time your visit for when it's most reliable, which you would say is typically the January to February. Is that right?
Well, the other thing is Madarao is all about the trees and the side and back country. And even if there is a good season, it takes a while for the snow base to build up so you can get into the trees. So even on a good year, you usually can't ski the trees until the second week of January.
Good to know.
So I think people hear about Madarao and this and that, and they come in around Christmas, and often it's not quite there yet.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely. And particularly this year, February was awesome. February was way better than January. That's not always the case, but end of January, start of February, I think as a rough rule is probably the best time to come.
Yep. And the trees here, actually, one thing that for me makes Madarao stand out against nearby, the probably better known Nozawa, is that the tree zones here are much bigger. As I said, backcountry is not just allowed here, it's actually promoted, right? Whereas Nozawa, backcountry is not permitted. And with those tree zones here, I think if you're looking to get your confidence up in the trees, Madarao's it's got some nice runs right there. They're pretty mellow, nice place to dive in there if you're kind of intermediate border skier and to test yourself.
The in-resort tree runs, yeah, definitely. But the resort definitely doesn't promote backcountry. They don't like it, to be honest, and there hasn't been too many incidents in backcountry, but they're definitely worried that if there's too many people going back there, it's going to create problems that they'll have to deal with their ski patrol. And I think that's the same with Nazara. I mean, there's plenty of backcountry out there, but they can't stop you from going, but they don't like you. And I mean, they're more obvious about up there, right? They got the signs that they're going to charge you $10,000 to send if they have to send a helicopter or ski patrol in to come pull you out. And that's, obviously just trying to keep people out of there because they don't want to be involved, preferably. And then Madarao is the same. But I think comparatively, the backcountry and the side country here is way safer than Nazara. Nazara and Hakuba and places like that, it's truly super dangerous.
Is that just in relation because of the steepness of the terrain? Like it's less steep here is the reason? Or
there's no big gorges and stuff like you get, and even Shikokogen there, you got canyons and cliffs that you can go into and never come out of. Whereas here, you're just kind of a big mountain surrounded by agricultural fields. So you always come out at a road somewhere, and probably a farmer in a K truck
come pick you up.
And there's creeks, but they're not deep gorges that you're going to plunge into and never come out again. You're just going to have to crawl out and lose a little bit of your dignity. Having said that, there's been a couple of deaths in the last two years here, and that was in resort, and that was simply just from too much snow. People just fall the wrong way, and obviously hitting trees and stuff like that. More so than avalanche dangers and things, which Hakuba or other places were more of a concern, I think.
Yeah, I guess it's a really important point to stress, especially I think for any Australian listeners, and I think a large part of the market here is Aussies coming looking for that powder, because that powder, at the right time is huge and fantastic. It's everything that it's said to be, but there can be a lot of it. And so the request not to go outside the boundary of the resort is there for your safety, and better to follow it, because people unfortunately do get themselves into trouble. And you said you've had some experience as an owner here of people who've been in trouble, or as ski patrol when you worked ski patrol here.
Lots of injuries, yeah. Well, this year we had a bunch of injuries. Backcountry, as I said, not so much issues with people getting lost or in avalanche situations. But, definitely people injuring themselves. And I think, Madarao is a good place for people interested in backcountry to start in a relatively safe environment. But Yeah, still there's nowhere's perfectly safe.
More injuries on the mountain or off the mountain?
I think there's more on, and maybe because people who do backcountry are usually better skiers. Maybe, I don't know. There's less proportionally they're getting out there, but yeah, we had a couple of knees, couple of broken legs, and some shoulders as well. But I was down in the hospital, I think 3 times this year. So, but that was all mainly in the main resort.
Yep. And when I say off the mountain, I was actually referring more to the nightlife.
Oh, walking around at night, yeah, slipping on the road.
Yeah, what's the nightlife like in Madarao?
I don't think compared to Vale, I'm probably not quite there, but I think people here make up for it with enthusiasm. What they lack in numbers, probably. There's probably only 2 or 3 bars where you could really sort of get your party on, but
yeah,
people, Australians, they manage somehow. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Actually, overall, the resort reminds me very much of Australian resorts, just in the layout, the feel, the little lodges here and there. There's not really, there's not really many big hotels here. There's probably only a couple of large hotels. Most of it's a combination like yours. Small lodges, often family run. Which creates a really nice atmosphere. One of the things that I really enjoy about coming to Madarao is exactly that. You do feel like, you kind of, the other people you're probably going to encounter at Madarao are the kind of people you want to be spending your winter with.
Yeah, right.
You agree with that?
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Bit of a different feel. And if people are looking toward the next season, so the winter for 2023, 2024, and they're interested in booking their trip to Madarao and definitely booking their trip at Madarao Mountain Lodge. When are you open for booking? When do you start taking bookings for the next season?
People are contacting already, and I usually just say we can pencil a room in for you guys, but I don't start really getting serious about bookings till May. So I think we all need a break away from it for a little bit. But I know there's definitely a lot of people wanting to book, like they are booking now.
Yep.
And I think next year is going to be crazy busy. I don't think, like this year was a bit of an afterthought, and a few people kind of, and February was, I think, busier than January nearly as prices got cheaper for airfares.
Yep.
But with a full year, and hopefully Corona and all the other world disasters that seem to be plaguing us at the moment will hold off this year. But I think it's going to be a big season. So, and I think everybody in Australia particularly have an awareness of that, and there's a lot of people booking early.
Yeah, and the one thing I noticed with the absence of inbound during Corona, I think a lot of Japanese took the opportunity to get back out to the resorts when they were quiet and either get back into their skiing or snowboarding or give it a go. Have you found that that's kept going, that the Japanese business is maybe stronger than what it was?
I don't know if it's stronger. The Japanese are always there, but they're Friday night, Saturday, that's it, and public holidays.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and that's what it's always been, even in the the 90s and the early 2000s when, I mean, they'd still be busy on a Saturday. But, you can't have a 2-month season and just be busy one day a week and possibly hope to make money. So that was why everything was so cheap in terms of real estate here, 10 years or so ago, because no one could make a business out of, 5 days or 10 days a new year and just a few weekends.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think one thing that I'm aware of, that a large part of the story out here in the snow country, especially when it comes to revitalizations of some of these resorts, towns, that foreigners play a large role in that. You said that you've been operating for a few years now. Have you seen a lot of change in that time in Madarao in terms of the investment going in, just how busy it is, popularity?
Yeah, when the borders are open, and I don't know the stats, but it's probably half the properties on the mountain are now Australian or foreign owned, mostly Australian. There's a few other nationalities in there swinging as well, but and there's just more and more inquiries, people wanting to buy properties. Which there's issues are, I don't know, that's another story, but it's generally it's been a great thing for the mountain because it was dying big time. When I was here in 2010, I did ski patrol. Like there was days I remember it was like 50 people midweek. Total people skiing on the mountain, and they were just And like I said, no one could make money on a couple of days and New Year. So they had to take on group tours from big Japanese travel agents, and they got paid absolute minimum per person to put people in. And so it wasn't a very profitable or really that enjoyable business. It was dying, and people, like if you go around Madarao, you see a lot of empty places where people, they're falling apart, where people just turned their backs and walked away from it because they're just incurring debts every year and not having any fun, obviously. But so Aussies have definitely helped bring that back and revitalise it and put the fun back into it, and vibrant, more bars, more restaurants that are starting to open. And so it's totally, from that perspective, has improved it immensely.
I'd like to jump more into that story, but just exactly how you found yourself here, your background, where you're from originally. Do you mind if we jump into that right now?
Sure.
Let's just take a break and we'll come back with part 2, talk more about your story and how you ended up here.
Sounds good.
So welcome back. We're talking with Mark from Madarao Mountain Lodge. Mark, just want to jump into a bit more of your story as to, obviously you're not Japanese. I think the more astute of our listeners might have picked up on that part already.
Right, no, I'm not.
You're certainly not born and bred. What's your story? Like, where originally is home and how did you end up here, not just in Japan, but also in Madarao?
Originally I was from Sydney, but I remember, like I was 18, I'd never seen snow before, and I went on some cheap, nasty package tour on a bus down to Smiggens Hole, and it was just ice and rock, but something just gelled. I just loved it. And like literally 2 months later, I was on a plane to Canada. I went to Lake Louise and Whistler and Red Mountain and spent a year and a half or so traveling around Canada. And I just got bitten by the snow bug. And then when I got back, I didn't really fit into normal society anymore. I was a snow freak. And there was a thing in the newspaper that said hiring Australian people on work holiday. Was it work? Yeah, it was a work holiday visa to work in a ski resort in Japan as a lifty. So I was just like, anything, just get me out of here. I want to go skiing again.
Right.
That would have been 1991, I think. And we got a job at a place called Hunter Mountain, which is in Tochigi Prefecture, closer to Tokyo.
Not even heard of it. Never heard of it.
It's pretty big. It's near Nikko, the famous sort of temple town.
Nikko, I know.
And Kinugawa Onsen is another beautiful onsen town there where we stayed at first. But and then Japan really clicked. It was another thing. I'll just go for 3 months and end up staying for a year and a half there as well. And at the time, my sister, who ended up being a Japanese teacher, was studying in Kyoto. So when the ski season finished, I went down and saw her and ended up studying Japanese myself and living in Kyoto.
I didn't know that. Right.
And then after that, it was ski season again. I got a job in Zao. There's a lifty up there.
How old are you at this stage? You're still quite young.
21.
Right, yeah.
Something like that, yeah. So, I did a season in Zao, and again, I was the only white guy in the town. So that was in terms of my Japanese. I remember sharing a room with 4 guys, tatami mat, dormitory. It had 11 o'clock curfew. It was like concentration camp. But still, I liked it. It was just helped me, my Japanese, get even better because I was kind of isolated up there. And it's a beautiful town, Zao. It's getting pretty... I think a few foreigners are going up there now. It's starting to get
to get better known, right? Yeah.
But it's an amazing area. And then, just kind of fell in love with Japan as well after that. And then I got because I had a reasonable level of Japanese by that point. I got to end up, when the Nagano Olympics were on CBS television from America, we're needing local fixers and staff to help them. So I got hired for a 3-month contract to work in Nagano. And then that was my first time in Nagano when I was at the Olympics. And at the end of it, I had just a period of time. I had some good friends who lived in Nagano and just started exploring. Originally it was Togakushi. We used to go up there snowboarding, but then, just kind of fell in love with Nagano, and then again decided not to go home and got a job teaching English. which is how kind of I met my wife. Not teaching her English. Her English is still terrible. No.
We definitely cut that part.
No, and then that was Nagano. So I was connected there. I lived here for 3 years. Played in a band.
Oh, yeah?
Kicking Mule Blues Band.
Band still together?
Well, it's just me. Sometimes I don't have it all together, but a band of one now. No, but then that's how I actually did meet my wife. She was friends of guys I was playing in a band with. I don't know why I got into that.
No.
That's not got anything to do with
let me pull you out of that hole. And then so obviously a few years then went past and then eventually to Madarao. So why did you choose Madarao? It sounds like you moved around.
Well, eventually, because it is again tied into my wife. Like she was from Nagano. So when we got married in 2006, it was like, yeah, I love Japan. I love my wife, but I don't really want to stay with my in-laws for long periods of time. So we bought a farmhouse.
And that's down in Kaiser, you mentioned just down below.
Yeah, just down the bottom of the hill.
Yep.
Yeah. So we bought an old farmhouse and started renovating that. And from that, I got to know Madarao. Did a bit of ski patrol. And so we got to know people up here, yeah.
So what is it about the lifestyle, outside of the resort, obviously, what is it about the lifestyle in the snow country that really attracted you to be here and set yourself up here permanently?
I think it's a lifestyle that if it was comparatively in Australia, it'd be a millionaire's lifestyle.
Yeah.
If you lived, I live within 15 minutes of, a bunch of world-class ski resorts and, get to travel outside of that, Like I think that's the attraction for particularly a lot of foreigners who move to Japan, that you can live a pretty nice life relatively cheaply.
Yep. Yeah, and part of the reason for that is a lot of these communities are really struggling, right? I mean, Japan is a country which is experiencing rapid aging and a population which is most pronounced in these regional areas, especially in the snow country. And so, they're in need of any people. It doesn't matter whether you're Japanese, foreign. And my experience is if you come in with the right attitude and want to be part of the community, work with the community, you'll be totally accepted. Is that how you found it?
They're wonderful. As long as probably as I speak Japanese, my wife's Japanese, we might have a little bit of advantage, but I don't think that makes too much difference. I think they're generally, as long as they see you're making a contribution and trying to get involved with their culture as opposed to trying to connect with them.
Yep.
I think they appreciate it. The people are awesome out here, country folk. I really like them.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it?
Haven't had many issues at all.
Right. But you're somebody who seems to, you've integrated yourself really well into the community. You seem popular amongst the community. That's not always easy to achieve, especially around the ski resorts. Is that something you kind of consciously worked on, or that just comes naturally to you? You're just a good man.
I'm just an awesome guy. No, I think Madarao's a little different to like Nozawa and Miyoko. I think Nozawa is 1,000-year-old community.
Yeah, that's right. So just
Miyoko's 500 years plus. So there's a long-established local families and hierarchy.
Yeah, true.
Whereas in the 1970s, this was a cow paddock, and even the people who are the older members of the community here, the elder statesmen, none of them were born here, and they've only been here for like 30 years.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of the baggage that comes with long-term communities and obligation and political rivalries over generations, presumably. There's lots of stuff, probably Nozawa and Miyoko, which we don't get here.
Are you positioning yourself to be that man?
What man's that?
In control?
No, definitely not. But but definitely I know that it's maybe a little bit more. Yeah, there's a few more difficulties probably living in those sorts of towns. And just obligations, cleaning onsens and being involved with community events, sports days and stuff here, whereas we're pretty much free willy out here.
Yeah, and it's a very different type of Japanese culture out here. I'm interested if you agree. Like, if you are approaching Japan as you've never been here before, you might have an impression of the Japanese, how they go about things, as quite conservative, taking time to get to know them. And while it's still Japan out here in the snow country, I think because it is an area where communities have to work together, people's guards get dropped much faster because they have to rely on each other. They have to work together. And I've always found as a foreigner living in Japan, I feel much more welcome in these areas than I do in the cities. In the city, you're just another face, another person, and cities are the same all over the world. People are going about their business. But out here, obviously, you get noticed as a foreign face, but I think actually they really value having you there, especially if you are working to be part of the community. So it sounds like from what you've already said, Mark, that you would agree with that, and it's part of the attraction.
I mean, sometimes those chores are a bit onerous, but it is on the other flip side of it is a great way to meet the locals and get involved with your town.
So on that note, I was just wondering, if anyone's listening who's thinking of relocating out here or to live or to set up a business, any tips or suggestions from your experience about the right way to go about it or things to look for in terms of making that final decision to come?
Well, I think most people do it as a part-time thing. They don't really leave Australia or the country they came from. And they do it as a part-time thing. And to me, that in a way is more difficult. People think it's going to be easy to run a ski lodge on the side of having a successful career in Sydney or something. Yeah. But so I think in a way, though, it's a bigger call. It's actually easier just to leave and be here year round.
Yeah.
Because you're just here and things flow a lot easier. It's hard to do as a part-time thing after work on the internet with your phone from Sydney.
And if you're doing it that way, the community will see that and probably see you as maybe temporary, right? That you're not going to be here forever.
Yeah, there's definitely a bit of that. Like people who are just here for 6 weeks a year or not, sometimes not even that long.
Yeah.
But
Do you get the chance to get back to Australia very often? I guess through COVID it was impossible.
COVID I couldn't, but we go back 2 months or 6 weeks a year, something like that.
Because you said most of your business is in the winter, so how are you spending your spring and summer? Are you sitting up here just looking at the cows and
pretty much,
trying to keep people off your property, or
chasing people out of town with my shotgun? Get out! No, it's I think there's always stuff to do bookings wise, and there's always something to do here, and we've still got renovation projects. That we've got to do. There's always something, we've got a few properties now, so you're always looking after things. Then back to Australia. And then, as I said, green season isn't great, but that's still there. August is we do business again. And the back end from September, October, you're usually planning for the next season. And I do like little projects here and there, and I'd like to do a bit of travel at the back end of the year, but I'm still trying to work out what I'm going to do this year, to be honest. That's not a bad way to be, I guess. But
what I've noticed already is that tourism, it looks like it's going to be pretty consistent through the year, that it's come back, with a vengeance already for the winter we've had, something back at 80% already of what it was pre-COVID. We can expect next winter to be well over what it was before COVID.
I think
I think the trend we're seeing is actually that tourism is going to continue out here into the summer. Obviously, these areas of snow country are best known for their winters, so most of their tourism, especially inbound tourism, is their winter. But the trend seems to be that people have missed Japan, they want to be back, and they're taking the chance to get out here and explore. And I hope that's something that comes across in this podcast. Obviously, these are areas known for their snow, but these are all year-round destinations. They're really places of 4 distinct seasons, and each season has their own reason to visit. So hopefully, maybe, people listening to this, if they were interested in coming out in the green season, are they free to get in touch and just inquire whether you're available, or it's something which is better to wait till the winter?
I mean, we have our farmhouse, which was our house, is now an Airbnb, and that's busy all year round, and that's already, we've had people coming in this month, and I think we booked out like 15 days in April.
Where is that farmhouse in relation to Nagano?
Yeah, 30 minutes on the Iyama line. Out to Keisa is the actual name of the town, but
scenic little line as well, actually. Really nice.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Way to travel. And so that's available all year round. So that's available through the summer, also in the winter, if people are interested.
Yeah. No, it's booked out. It's open to bookings all year round.
Yep, no worries. So what we might do in the notes for the episode, we'll put the link there for the stay at Kaiser as well.
Oh, that'd be great.
And, of course, Madarao Mountain Lodge. Mark, I think it's a good time to wrap it up. I know that you're busy. I think we've got the final guests of the season checking in today, so I'll get out of your way.
No worries.
Thank you very much for your time, mate. And hopefully, maybe if you enjoyed it, maybe come back sometime near the next winter to have a chat again.
Sounds good. Thanks, mate.
Cheers.
So that's it for the first episode of Snow Country for Old Men. Another very big thank you to Mark for giving up his time to speak with me on what was one of the final days of the season. For anyone looking to book their next ski or snowboard trip to Nagano, I certainly recommend getting in touch with Mark and staying at the Madarao Mountain Lodge. I'll include a link to his website on the show notes for this episode. The website for the podcast itself is www.snowcountryforoldmen.com. You can also follow us on Instagram at Snow Country for Old Men, Twitter at Snow Country Pod, Facebook Snow Country for Old Men. Make sure to follow us and subscribe to the podcast. Playing us out today is the music of Izuna Gogen Daiko, a local taiko group based in Izuna, Nagano. I hope you enjoy and see you next time. Bye for now.